Okay, Georgia's got a real test on their hand going to go see the Rebels in Oxford. Georgia's a 2.5 point favorite. This is the lowest they've been as a favorite since the Alabama game. This is the third time this season that Georgia has not been at least a double-digit favorite in games. I mean, they were an underdog at Texas, about 4.5, I think it was, and then obviously a 1.5 point favorite at Alabama. They're a 2.5 point favorite here against the Rebels. That line moved against Georgia on Saturday night. About said Alabama. Ole Miss really, really played well against Arkansas. It was a little bit different than the way that the Rebs have played lately in terms of production on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, they really, really scored a pile of points. So that definitely had something to do with it. But Georgia's play against Florida, too, is the combination of those two things that led us to where we're at right now. The previous game, I watched Ole Miss play LSU as well as play Oklahoma. Man, they really struggled against Oklahoma. They looked bad against Oklahoma the bulk of the time, I would say. But they won that game by 12. They of course lost to LSU in overtime. Their best, probably Ole Miss's best game of the season was the win in Columbia against South Carolina. That was a really good win. They won 27-3. They really played well. Their defense is much improved. And so I think, listen, this is going to be a challenging game for Georgia, Ole Miss this season. And I'm going to read the scores off, but, they scored 76, 52, 40, 52. Then they got in the SEC play. They scored 17, 27, 26, 26. And then this past week was a complete outlier with the 63 points against the Hogs. So, Ole Miss still got to play Florida, Georgia, and State. Clearly, this, Lane Kiffin's teams at Ole Miss have had a harder time at the end of seasons. Now, a lot of that was because they were playing LSU and Alabama near the end of the season. They played State as well. I mean, Ole Miss losing to State would, for me, be pretty shocking. I'm not sure I believe that at all. But they play them on a short week. They go to the Swamp after they host Georgia here. I mean, they play Georgia and then they get a week off before they go to the Swamp. And we'll see what Florida's got. I mean, Florida's going to fight Ole Miss. I don't know if they can beat them. But look, I think this, for me, Georgia's a better team. Georgia, to me, it sounds crazy. They're not that far from clicking in a very real way on offense. But that involves Carson just not turning it over. It's that simple. Instead of trying to get balls in there where the ball doesn't belong, there's nothing wrong with checking down. There's nothing wrong with hitting your guys that are underneath. And that's what he was so good at the beginning of the season. But, Mike and Kirby and all them, they know vastly more than I do. But I see what an interception is. And that's been hurting Georgia lately. Now, the Dogs have been very fortunate that they have one of the best defenses in the country, if not the best defense in the country. They've only given up 34 points off of turnovers this season. That's really not that much. If you think about it, they had 10 against the Gators, 10 against State, that's 20. They only had 7 against Alabama. So there's not been a lot of turnover havoc. Like, had Florida won the other day by getting 3 interceptions, that would not have been strange at all. Florida's problem was they threw one themselves, and then, of course, that disastrous snap. I mean, having been down there for so many years in a row, 27 years in a row, or what? Not in a row, but 27 times. That's the first time I've seen that before. Just a complete and like had the ball just been like a bad snap, but he rocketed that thing, man, and the ball kept just rolling. That was a good example of how when it goes bad, sometimes it just really goes bad. And that moment was really bad for Florida, as bad as the turnovers were for Georgia. And that turned out to be a turnover too. Turnover on downs, I guess, technically. Actually, I don't know who. It might have been just a straight-up turnover. I'm not sure which it was, but it was a turnover on downs or a turnover. Either way, it results in the same thing, which was that Georgia got the ball deep in Florida territory and scored soon thereafter. And the momentum of the game changed. But, And anytime you're playing, you want to minimize the amount of time that you're trying to fight away momentum and build on the times that you've got it yourself. I've got a really neat little thing here I want to show y'all real quick that you can get. The link is going to be down below. This is exclusive to these guys. I showed this to my son last night, and he got a giant kick out of it. This is a bobblehead. A giant bobblehead of Harry, Harry Dawg. And anyway, you can order it right down below. There's not a lot of these, so make sure that you're ordering it now using the link down below, and they'll get that to you quickly, well before Christmas. But again, I have a younger son, and he was fascinated by it, I guess you could say. It's a neat little toy. It's heavy and made well, by the way. That seems like porcelain would be the term I'd use. 2.5, man. Immediately I think that's low, but I have to say there's a reason why it's that low. Georgia's not playing offensively the way that they could or should. You're going on the road, against a team that's in the top 15, top 16 team in the country. Ole Miss has the capability to really score. Georgia's defense is going to have to play well on Saturday. And there's no confusion about who the better team is. Georgia's the better team. That doesn't mean you're going to win for sure. And the way in which Georgia's playing right now, which is not very crisp, it's not good. That's not good either. Well, with that said, just 1 week to the next. Think of it this way. Ole Miss been up and down a little bit themselves. You're playing so well. You're hotty-totty. I mean, like you're playing really well. And then you open the season by getting manhandled by Kentucky. Like literally getting manhandled. Kentucky should not beat Ole Miss. And they did. So 20-17. And then they, a week later, go to South Carolina and just beat up on the Gamecocks, a team that's decent. That's the only bad loss Carolina has this season. Period. That's the only loss I think that's by more than a touchdown. I mean, they just rolled it all over them, and then they go into Baton Rouge and really are the better team the bulk of the night and lose. I don't know. And then a week after that, or 2 weeks after that, they just didn't play well against Oklahoma. It was a 11 o'clock start. They looked bad offensively. The better defenses are slowing Ole Miss down for sure. I mean, you think about Kentucky, Oklahoma. Defense is really all those guys have got. LSU played fine on defense, but Ole Miss probably should have won that game, and they didn't. And that's why they're in the predicament they're in. And they all but have to win against Georgia for their season to continue. Jackson Dart was spectacular against the Hogs. And the question is, can he be really good against Georgia? Anybody that's throwing for 515 and 6 touchdowns, they're doing pretty well. And this guy, that though, I will say, that's the first time in 5 games, that is the only time this season that he's thrown multiple touchdowns in an SEC game, Jackson Dart. He tripled actually by doubling he doubled his entire SEC touchdown performance that day. He had 3 coming in. He left with 9 throwing it. So, you want to see the problem with Jackson Dart is, is he a dual threat guy? He's dual threat enough. I can tell you that right now. The kid can run. So it's problematic. The reason why I would lean towards Georgia on this one is A, I think they're the better team. B, Kirby does pretty well, has done pretty well against this type of team. This, they're known for their offense kind of thing. I think Ole Miss is going to have to play well defensively. They've gotten a lot better on the defensive side of the ball. They just have. But, Jackson Dart's been good, but he's not. It's been a little bit up and down. You look at the Carolina game, he goes for 67%. That's pretty good. They smashed South Carolina. He's only at 52% for that game. Against LSU is at 57%. Oklahoma is at 73%, but they don't play great. So they got really killed by penalties in that game, I feel like. I remember happening too. But they just were just lethargic against Oklahoma. And maybe it will be that way, coming up too. I don't know. I mean, Carson twice this season has been below 60%. That's it. And in those games, he threw 3 interceptions in both those games. Even against the Gators, he was over 60% with 3 interceptions. So Carson Beck plays a little bit better. Georgia is probably a lot better. Like that's the difference is if he plays like he does in the first quarter and the bulk of the fourth quarter, Georgia probably wins a lot of these games going away. It's time for him to play better. But they have a challenge on their hands, but they should win this game. They've got a challenge on their hand, but they should win this game. Welcome to the new world of the SEC. You're not just going to kill everybody. And, that's what it is. I don't know what else to say about it, y'all. I mean, it'll be a challenge because you're on the road. It won't be like playing at Alabama. It won't be like playing at Texas, but it is going to be on the road. It will be much more like the situation in terms of the sound and the size of the state. It's much more like Lexington, where Georgia's offense simply did not play well. I mean, they played much better in Austin and in Tuscaloosa than they did in Lexington. It's Georgia has to play well. And I would say that Trevor Etienne is looking like a go against the Rebels. That's a big deal. Georgia, I was listening to what Aaron Murray had to say on here earlier today. I know Aaron knows a lot more about football, and I get all that. But I fully agree with everything he said about it's right there. I mean, all you have to do is watch the game, and it's right there. But it's not going to be right there. This is me speaking now. It's not going to be right there if you turn it over. And that's what's going on. I mean, everybody knows it. Carson knows it. Kirby says it. I mean, there's nothing new here. I mean, it's just what it is. Thanks for watching. Georgia and Ole Miss coming up. The Dogs a 2.5-point favorite.